So I am a huge, long-time, fanatical listener of Herbie Hancock. And around 2000 or 2001, a guy who runs a very popular record store in New York told me he knew I was a Hancock devotee, and he said, you know, Allan, Hancock made a private label recording of Jewish synagogue music. Did you ever hear of it? I was floored. And I said, I gotta have that. And through his collector's pipeline, grapevine, he was able to acquire the album, which was called Hear, O Israel. And from the moment it came on, I found it a just beautiful, wonderful album. And I thought, you know, why hasn't anyone written about this? Why do so few people know about this recording?
My father was a rabbi, a Reformed rabbi, and he was in a pulpit in Brooklyn, New York when I was born in August of 1948. We celebrated Shabbat and we went to services. And then I went to Hebrew school. I guess at music camp I tried to write some jazz, maybe at the age of 14 or so. I found some books. So I learned a little bit about jazz harmony from some books.
And he started composing tunes that could work with Jewish liturgical text. And by coincidence, in the mid-60s, his father, who encouraged these doodlings, told him there is no such thing as Jewish music. You know, you can kind of interpret it and make it your own.
I was probably 16 or 17, well, I guess it was 1965, I think, when I first wrote the jazz service. So I said, okay, I'll write some stuff and we'll play it. It was called Hear, O Israel, a Sabbath Service in Jazz. The text was from the old Union Prayer book, which I think was published in 1920. I wrote it for two women singers and rhythm section. I played piano on it. We ended up playing it at the temple and then at several congregations around Massachusetts, even as far away as Baltimore. My father's assistant at the time, Rabbi David Davis, he suggested making a record of it.
And this was in December of 1967. At the time, John was still in the middle of his sophomore year at Brown University. And he came to New York and found out he was going to be performing a few minutes of music with some really quality musicians.
Rabbi Davis hired producer Charles Morrow. I guess he's the one that booked the players. Why did I get the players I got? Well, it was a no-brainer. Ask for Herbie Hancock, might as well ask for the best. And he played with Ron Carter, so might as well ask for him. They were playing with Miles. That was the quintet with Miles Davis. You know, one of the greatest groups ever. Before the session, I was very excited. I would say the night before when I heard the singers, I kind of had a sinking feeling because I was expecting kind of a jazz style in terms of the quality of voice. And they were basically operatic classical singers. So not much to do about it at that point.
They made the recording in '67 in one 6-hour stretch. The musicians were paid day rate, studio rates, which was virtually nothing. Herbie Hancock later thought it was maybe a couple $100 he got out of it.
I played, I had written parts for myself, but by playing, I wasn't listening to what I should have been listening to. The first problem with the music of that session was the arrangements.
There were some mistakes with respect to the voicings, and the octaves were off. And at the time, Jonathan played French horn, a very quaint instrument on a jazz album, but he was 17 years old and really was competing with these super professional musicians.
Basically, as far as I was concerned, it was a bust. You know, I loved hearing the Herbie Hancock stuff. It was just great. I couldn't listen to any of the writing. I couldn't listen to anything else. They made some LPs and released it, and you'd see it occasionally in temple gift shops.
Hero Israel deserved a wider audience for sure, and John Wilson, tremendous jazz critic, gave it pretty much an A-plus review and compared it really favorably and said it's a jazz service that swings and you couldn't ask for more than that. But otherwise, the recording just sort of disappeared. But luckily, Michael Isaacson was in the recording studio when the original was made. And many years later, I guess it was 1989, Michael Isaacson had had a phenomenal commercial career at that point. And it helped Lowell and the archive come into being.
And he remembered the session. He asked for the recording. I sent him a recording of it saying, I don't think it's worth putting out. You know, I'd love to get another crack at it. And being a musician, again, that I respected, he agreed with me. It was not worth putting out. So he put together the funding that let me do it again.
He had spent all that time not only at Berklee School of Music teaching film scoring, but he had gone off and had a successful career doing commercial music and just felt his abilities were so much further than they were, obviously, than when he was a kid.
It was April of '92 when we recorded in Boston with friends and colleagues and some students. So for that, I did rewrite it quite a bit, although the melodies are basically the same and most of the chord progressions are still the same as version 1. The arrangements are just way more sophisticated. There's also 4 voices, so there's intricate harmony or unisons there. The coordination between the horns and the voices is pretty nice, actually, and I did not play on it. I just conducted. I had the idea I'm going to demand from the union to let me use some of the Herbie Hancock stuff, you know, to add on to it.
Jonathan was able to take some of the Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Grady Tate session portions that were segues and introductions and use them very creatively for continuity's sake in the new recording. And I have to say they do work beautifully.
You know, I should mention that the trumpet player, the person who played trumpet and flugelhorn, is the late Herb Pomeroy, who, as a teacher of jazz comp and arranging, might be the most influential teacher that ever lived. Basically, whatever I can improvise, whatever I can write, I would say, I don't know, 75% of that I owe to him and what I learned in his courses. The most important thing to me about the recording, in terms of the finished release, where I added 5 minutes of Herbie Hancock playing, is it's probably the only recording in the world that has Herb Pomeroy and Herbie Hancock. One of the big ways where jazz can be kind of a nice thing in a religious setting now and then is because of the improvisation. There is a whole spiritual element to it. I mean, any musician that plays a great solo, there's something otherworldly going on. Whether it's their pre-conscious takes over, whatever, as opposed to their conscious or their subconscious, there's some creative, incredible element that humans have that creates incredible stuff on the spot. And that has a definite spiritual element to it, no matter who's doing it.
I think there have been very few successful marriages of Jewish and jazz music, and the original did it some 50 years ago, and the redo did it again, you know, in 1992, and the fact that both can live simultaneously parallel lives is very satisfying. So that's what set me on the path to write the long, definitive piece about it.
The thing I would like to add is profound and incredible thanks to the Milken Archive for giving me the opportunity to get work that, you know, has some acclaim done correctly and improved drastically so that I can listen to it. And so it's a big deal to me. You know, it's rare that you get a do-over like that. I really appreciate that.